So this isn't necessarily a surprise. I think sometimes we see cards like this get pulled right away, and sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes we never see them get pulled. But so the one of one Victor Wembanyama Superfractor has been pulled out of Topps Chrome, and it is not a sticker auto, so that's good. That was one of the things that I was nervous about when I was kind of getting some of the details on this product and kind of trying to determine which of these cards, which I think maybe, I don't know, two Thursdays ago, 3 Thursdays ago, maybe I talked about which of the cards I thought was going to be the biggest, whether it was going to be the regular plain Superfractor without the auto, or sorry, the regular plain black one of one from Prism, or if it was going to be this Superfractor autograph that's non-licensed. Which one is going to be more popular? I think they both have their downsides. I don't know. I mean, upsides, they're both rookies, I guess. I mean, we still, like I said, we still are, at least with the NBA, the season's not like now with the like how it is with the NFL. Like the new NBA season is still, like, I don't think they started training camp or anything, so they're still in the off season. So it's okay for this basketball product to come out as if it's up to me. But that one of one has been pulled, and I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens to this card after that. I'm sure the person probably will get it graded. I think most of the time we see some of these big cards end up getting graded, even though I think one way or the other, it's hard to determine whether you should or shouldn't grade the one of ones. I think based on the history that a majority, at least in my opinion, of the big one of ones or the big rare cards that we've seen have gotten graded. I don't know. I would just say at this point, it's probably just safer to get it graded. I think there could be a difference in price there, especially too, because it's like, even if you get it graded, you get a bad grade, you can just take it out of the case, which I guess if it's a big enough card like this will probably be something that PSA would promote, or whatever company grades the card. I would imagine they probably are going to want to promote that they graded the card. I think that's what we saw with like the Wembanyama's, the one of one, and then the Shimmer. Is either the Shimmer one of one, or it was the Nebula one of one, were both being graded at the same time when Prism first came out. Those two of probably the biggest cards of all of basketball, especially with no autos, no RPAs. Those were probably two of the biggest basketball cards that came out last year, and no autos for Wembanyama too. So those are probably the two of the biggest. And now the other piece of news, it's kind of news, I would say. It's that college football is officially back. We had week 1 this past weekend. Florida didn't do so well. That's my team. That was, going up against Miami. I think their over under on wins is 4.5. So that's bad. Like they're projecting this team not to be a bowl team, which is unfortunate. But what that also means is that I think we have another season where Topps, I guess, will have some chances to innovate on what their plan for the college football season is. I think I saw a Prism, I believe it was a Prism draft of whoever the what's his name, the quarterback at Nebraska who's been there for a while, and Quinn Ewers also. They had but on these college cards, they're using the rated prospect moniker or icon. Oh, so yeah, Prism draft picks. Dylan Riolia. I don't know. I will probably get more into the players as we get farther along in the season. But I think after the past 2 years, it's probably going to be pretty tough for Topps to top, no pun intended, the past 2 years they've had with college sports, because they brought back Bowman. They brought back a licensed Bowman product, which, again, I think is one of the more underrated stories in all of sports cards over these past few years. And what Topps has done is they came out with a new licensed Bowman product to compete with Panini. And realistically, this kind of gets to, I think that's what it should just be, that way for all sports. It shouldn't just be that way for, NIL or college or whatever. Because I guess Panini still has the license, because if they're coming out with like a Quinn Ewers Texas card, that would then, I would assume that they have the license. And same with this. Well, actually, I don't know. The kind of the interesting thing here is, I guess that you can see the Nebraska logo on that quarterback, the the Nebraska quarterback card, Dylan Raiola. I guess I'll look into him a little bit more. I don't know, but you can see the end, but it does look like a practice jersey, which is sort of, I don't know, a little bit interesting. But so that rated prospect logo, obviously, I don't think it holds as much weight as the first Bowman, and I think that is going to change. It has. I think it has changed, and it's going to continue how we view college cards, because I think my biggest issue with college cards was that they just came out after the players weren't in college anymore. So, like, if you were looking at one of your favorite players in a college uniform, you aren't getting that card until they're on a pro team. And at that point, it's like, I get if you are from like a big football school and you really care a lot, then maybe that's a card that you want to buy. But if it's just a card that you want, in theory, you would probably just want to wait until the pro cards come out. You don't want, especially now that because the draft pick cards don't really come out until the draft happens. So like the rookies from this past year, if they were to get unlicensed, it would be licensed college cards. But the timeline of when they're coming out, I think I don't love that timeline. I think they need to figure out a way, which they have now with NIL and with Topps coming in. They've figured out a way to come out with college cards while the players are still playing in college, which I realistically think that's almost, I think, the only strategy you should really be trying to apply to college branded sports cards. I think if you have the license, or if you did have the license like Panini, I think there was obviously some sort of players association thing where they weren't able to, and now with NIL you are able to. It's a no-brainer strategy really here to get as many licensed cards, because, or at least for the first football year for Bowman, they were unlicensed. But starting last year for football, they were licensed. And I believe that they've come out with 2 licensed basketball Bowman products. So with the start of college football, that means we are probably going to start to see, hopefully, some different things. I mean, like I said, I'll be here to cover any stories like that are new, that are important enough that I think that they should be talked about on the podcast, because I think they need to be documented in a way. I mean, just some of how the reaction and what people are thinking of any of these new concepts and products, they should be covered, I think. And I think that's one thing that has definitely changed very significantly over the past 5-10 years within cards, is the amount of content around them, I think, has astronomically increased. I think it went from almost zero to everybody trying to start a content channel, which I like. I think the more competition, the better. I think I'm always rooting for anybody who wants to create content, because it's hard. It's not like an easy thing to, if you want to start a podcast or you want to start writing, it's not like, it's not as, you don't just become a super, the best at it after overnight, basically. So, I think with the changes that Topps has done, we have seen people talk about, like I said, some of the newer content creation around these products, because that's one of the newer innovations I think we've seen over the past, 10 years within sports. Like, I think that they really have revolutionized, Topps has, what the possibilities for college products are, because for my whole time within sports card, they were non-stories. They were not important cards. No one, people cared a little bit, but like the difference in how people care about Bowman now versus how people cared about even licensed. I mean, because they were licensed, but it was like they would come out like after the draft. So it was like they weren't on that team anymore. And I think that's actually one of the big change. I think that's the biggest change for getting people to want to buy those cards or to want to buy that product, is to get it into the hands of collectors and people who want the cards as the player is licensed, first of all, and then second of all, as the player is still playing for the team that they're wearing the uniform of. Okay, so we have a bit of follow-up from a story that I talked about, probably at the beginning of the summer, maybe in the middle of July at some point. I was seeing a lot of people talk about the CT scanners and the box of sports cards. And, it was a story that I had seen some people talk about, but it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't exactly, I didn't think it was I thought it was a big deal, but I didn't know like what the next steps were. I didn't think it was anything past just making a podcast about it, talking about it for a little bit, maybe offering some solutions. But something has happened in the past couple days. There was a podcast that was put out with Nat Turner by Sports Card Madness, which, I mean, shout out to them, because this is actually probably one of, I don't know how they really got him to answer this question. Obviously I watched most of the interview, and they had pretty good rapport back and forth, but like, this is pretty crazy, the stuff that he said. So I'm actually going to play what he said in the interview, and then we'll get back into some of my thoughts about this topic.
For boxes produced before today, you have to be very cautious. You basically have to assume that the box has been scanned. So I think you could see a price correction in boxes that are thrown up on eBay. Manufacturers, I think, are going to have to respond. I mean, look, I think it's awesome in the sense that this is, like disruption, innovation at its finest. Yeah. The hobby's going to have to respond somehow.
All right. So, I mean, you heard what he said there. If you're buying a box of this high-end product, whether it's, and I have actually, on TikTok, when I was looking into this a little bit more, there's been more videos that have been put out in the past like couple weeks that really show that like you can basically see with the name on the card, you can see the serial number, you can see if there's a place where the autograph might exist, you can see the location on the card where the relic probably exists. So you heard Nat Turner there. He said, if you are buying any of this product, basically just assume, or anything from the past couple of years, basically just assume that it's been scanned. Like, because I think one thing that I was thinking was, who would buy any of these scanners? Like, it can't be worth it. But then if you think about it, if hypothetically you bought this scanner, I'm making up a number here. Let's just say it's $50K. Let's even say it's maybe $100K, just because and it could even be more than that. I'm just putting $100K as like, a number that the normal average person wouldn't just be buying something for $100K. I don't know exactly, but maybe if you're dealing in the high-end sports card game, the $100K to do something like this seems like a drop in the pan. But I mean, I'm going to be honest here. I just don't see how this is like legal. Like, not just from like I'm angry at you, the people online are angry at you type thing that happens in sports cards sometimes. Like, this seems like fraud. Like, if you are actually scanning boxes, and knowingly reselling ones that don't have hits in them or don't have the top card, you're scamming. Like, it should be illegal, and you should probably go to like jail. Like, it's a crazy level of like, it seems like the type of thing that like probably, unfortunately, now that we're looking at this, has been going on for a couple years, and people are finally starting to catch on, but like, it shouldn't be allowed. And I think the card companies really need to step in here, because if the CEO of the biggest authentication company in the country is saying that, yeah, if you're buying one of these products, you should probably just assume that it's been scanned. Like, if you're one of these card companies, I think you look at it two ways. You look at it and say, well, the product's already out there. There's nothing we can do about it. We can try and fix, because like he said at the end there, it's companies are going to have to innovate, and they're going to have to figure out how to make it so you can't scan these products. I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know how they're going to do it. That's not my job to do, to figure this out. But the card companies need to, in my opinion, they need to step in here and say, we're recalling all the products that could be an issue, which I saw Topps Dynasty F1 was the product that I saw get scanned. So I think it's mostly the cards in the briefcases. Like, any of the cards that come in the higher end cases could be victims of this scanning. Like, and I really do think that, like, if you are Topps and Panini, I think they both need to collectively step in here. And I actually think there needs to be some sort of joint statement from them, or some sort of joint thing that's like, it just, you shouldn't be allowed to do this. Like, this is my biggest problem with this overall, is just that this is not fair. Like, it's fraud. It's just they're being frauds. Like, it really should just be like, we're going to recall the cases that have not been opened. I don't know what they're going to do, if that means they have to resort the cases or something like that, but they should recall these cases, because this is like this is like one of the biggest manufacturing flaws of potentially of all time, just based on the fact that, like, where we are in the industry right now, with how much money is floating around, how much money has and how much money probably hopefully will in the future. It just is insane that this is something that has probably been happening, and now that it's coming out into the light, who knows how long people have been doing this, really. Like, I don't know. I mean, if you're dealing in that large of quantity, or if you're dealing in that large of inventory for sports cards, like, maybe it's something that the money you're spending on the scanner, or the money you're spending to get these cards scanned, like, isn't that bad based on what you're making. But, like, it should be illegal. Like, and I don't know. I'm not sure what has to happen here, or who has to step in. Because I don't know, the card companies, they're probably, I would say after this weekend, there's got to be something that comes out from Topps or Panini about this, because, like, this is just, I think that this is too big of an issue for the high-end collection, the high-end side of sports cards, for there to be nothing done, which I would almost say that the high end of sports cards is probably a lot of the money that came in and out of cards in the past year. Like, people who were making making money hand over fist were probably buying a lot of those cases. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess they're the ones that maybe have been taking a hit here. And, then Nat Turner talks about the price correction on these cases. Like, yeah, I guess, like, it just seems like, how would you even price correct something that the person knows what's inside? Like, it would be different if that was the thing where the dealers, I don't know. Like, it's kind of frustrating, and it's actually kind of got me at a little bit of a loss for words, just since, like, because it just seems like it's so ridiculous and so bad, but there's nothing that seems like there's nothing that can be done about it. And the amount of product that's been sold like this it's been crazy. It's been, it's one of it's obviously higher end products that this is an issue, but I don't know. I think the card companies need to work with the hobby shops. They need to say, if you have any of these boxes, you need to send them. I would even go as extreme to say, if you are a hobby shop and you are working directly with Topps, or you're working with one of the distributors or Panini, I think that those companies should come in and say, hey, if we need all these boxes back, no more of these boxes are being sold from. They need to figure out when the issue started. They need to do the research here. This shouldn't be now, at least now it shouldn't. This shouldn't be an issue that has to be investigated by people on social media. This needs to be like I don't care about, I do care. I don't like the internal investigation that Panini or that Topps was doing on, like, whatever, sending cards to breakers. They need to be spending that money on this, and they need to fix the problem. And I think, in my opinion, that means I think they need to get any of the boxes that they think could be affected by this, get them, repackage them, figure out a way to change whatever you need to change, and then send them back out. And I think it really should be like, if you are a hobby shop and you have any of these products and you're caught selling the product after they've been recalled, you should lose your license to be a dealer. You shouldn't be allowed to sell these products anymore, because it's fraud. It's fraud. That's what it is. It's just, at this point, we're dealing with fraud. It almost seems like this was what the Adam Sandler movie would have been about, realistically. Like, this is, a Uncut Gems type situation where there's just scamming going on left and right. And this is just, like, directly, like, what's in the box, you can sell it or you can open it, and you're scamming. So I don't know. I think the card companies need to work with the hobby shops. And they need to even work with anybody that they think might have some of these boxes, because they just shouldn't be. The prices are going to go down for sure, I think. But, like, even at that, if you have the CEO of the biggest authentication company coming in and saying, you should just assume that any of these boxes have been scanned, that's insane. That's just crazy. That's just, it shouldn't. The card companies need to step in and do something here. And if they don't, I don't know. Maybe they won't. Maybe in the next year or two, they'll have some fix for it. They need to come out with something to reassure people that these cards are not being scammed. Because if they are, then people are being scammed. And this is fraud, I think, at a level we haven't really seen within the industry. We've seen fraud, we've seen scams in the industry. But I think knowingly selling a case of any of these products that are being affected and scanning them and knowing what's in there, and then and giving the customer any type of indication of what could be in the box, or giving your loyal customers a box that you know what's inside, it's just bad. It's just not good. It's not good for consumers. It's sure, it's fine for the people that are the friends that are making the money, but it's bad for the industry. And hopefully this next week we see something. We see some sort of, because it's just now, I think the fact that it's Nat Turner is talking about this on a podcast. Like before, it was just, from what I saw, it was just a couple people like I discussed on the podcast, but I didn't really see any, authentication people or any people within the industry really talking about it. But now that you have Nat Turner talking about the issue, I think it is time for Panini, Topps, Upper Deck, whoever's coming out with products with this briefcase technology needs to step in, and they need to innovate, and they need to, if they have any of these products, they need to make the change before the product comes out. So I am waiting. I'm going to wait a day or two. I mean, hopefully by the end of this week, Golden's website gets updated. Because there were some pretty big cards that sold in the past day or so. And Golden's website has always been a little bit confusing to navigate if you're looking for specific cards. I know you can look up the specific cards, but trying to find them in the group of the auction, when I was doing it and looking at prep for this episode, there were a bunch of sales that they had said were happened on Twitter that I didn't see on their website, or because I even searched just by year. And that's kind of what that will be sort of what I want to talk about on the episode when some of these other cards get actually put on the website. I don't know. It was kind of confusing, to be honest, but the one of the cards that I did want to highlight that I thought was interesting was there was a red autograph Bowman Mookie Betts. I believe that this was numbered to 5, I think, and it was $123,000, which is the highest price. And they worded this weirdly: an all-time public sale for any Mookie Betts card. So I don't know. Maybe they know of another Mookie Betts card that sold privately. Off the top of my head, if I had to guess, it would have to be a Superfractor or one of the other reds, maybe. But off the top of my head, when I was looking for it, I couldn't find what the highest one is. So highest public sale for Mookie Betts, I think, is interesting because it is a card from 2013, I believe. Let me just make sure. 2014. And that's, I guess, now that's 10 years ago, which now, I guess that is a decent amount of time. But the fact that it took this long for Mookie Betts, who I actually think is, maybe I'm biased because he was a Red Sox, and I'm pretty disappointed that he didn't stay with us, that we traded him for nothing, basically. And I think that the dismantling, look, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about the Red Sox, but the dismantling of the 2018 team, to look at that and to look at what we got for any of the players that we won a championship with, since we traded a lot of them. We did end up trading them, but to look at what we got in return is just absolutely pathetic. But that has, like I said, that has nothing to do with cards. So sorry, I'm going to get off of that. But Betts has been one of the best players for quite some time. I would argue if Shohei doesn't come along, I would say he probably is the best player in the league right now. And and there was all the talent's in LA, and it's so crazy that Shohei's in LA, he's in LA. I mean, the Dodgers team, that team is insanely maybe overpowered, maybe regular powered. I don't know. It's a crazy team. But for 10 years to go by, and this is finally the card that I guess essentially breaks the record for Mookie Betts cards, is kind of interesting. And it kind of makes you think, it makes you look at the different eras within cards and which cards are going to be important. And I don't know if necessarily, because like Bowman, for example, like this type of Bowman card too, like not just because there was obviously Bowman before, but I feel like, in, I don't know, actually, I'm not sure what year they would have started really kind of, or what year they would have started with this style Bowman, but it's, I'd have to imagine it's in kind of that first territory of the era where the Bowman autograph became maybe one of the best cards to collect of a player. And I'll just say this, I'm not fully in tune with autographs on cards. Like I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on base and the pricing of base cards. The pricing of autographs, I don't know. I just don't really have a good sense of like what's overvalued, what's undervalued. And I mean, I'm still learning every single day different prices and different things. So like even base cards, I could still predict the price or predict where it could be, and I might be completely off. But for the red, I numbered to 5. It doesn't say on the front of the card. I'm pretty sure it's numbered to 5. For this card to sell for $123,000, it's also very interesting that there's still that much money floating around in cards. And I think this is kind of the point that I'm going to talk about, if I do end up talking about, which I can actually, I'll kind of get into this point, and I may or may not fully go over some of the other cards that were sold through Golden. But like the point that I want to try and make is that although we have gone through some pretty big ebbs and flows within the industry, we still have people who are buying Mookie Betts cards for $123,000. And then I know one of the other cards that sold was an Ellie De La Cruz card that I believe sold for $116,000. That was on their website. And as of when I was doing the research, that was actually the third most expensive card that sold on Gold, or the third most expensive item, because I think the other two items one was a jersey, a Ronald Acuna jersey, and then the other one was actually that Tom Brady Superfractor from Bowman Baseball. So the amount of money I think we still have in this industry, I'm wondering if it's new people coming in still, or if the money is going around the industry somehow. Like if somebody is buying, or not, well, it wouldn't be somebody, but if groups of people are buying and selling some of these high-end cards, like I guess in theory, it's it's a lot of it's public. So like hypothetically, if this card gets listed, we would sort of know that it's that specific card, especially because this one's serial numbered. So we would know the serial number of the card, whether it's being bought or sold. But I wonder if it's new people coming in and buying these cards, or if it is a similar group of people who have just been buying the cards, who have the money to buy the cards. I mean, I'd like to think that one day I'd have the money to spend $120,000 on a sports card. I guess, that's a pipe dream. I don't even know what I would have to do to get that amount of money. I mean, there's billionaires. I mean, even for a millionaire, I don't know if a millionaire, you'd have to probably be in the hundreds of millions or even tens of millions to buy a card like this, because that's 120. That's a significant percentage of, this significant percentage depending on what, I don't know, tax bracket you fall in or whatever. But the cards are still selling. Now, I know we've had this issue in the past where the cards sell and they don't really seem like they're going to sell, which Golden, I think, that's one of the things that I think has been kind of a good thing that a lot of the auction houses have done. I feel like they've tried to get away from any type of fake bids or cards being sold. And I mean, this also, I don't know. I think the one issue that I'll always probably see within cards is just, I don't know. I don't know if like I said, I think Golden has done a fine job, but at the same time, we don't know if somebody's buying this card and it's just their buddy and they're going to give them the money back. They're going to swap the card back, and then they have one of these public sales, and there's nothing really to stop someone from doing that. I mean, if Golden, I feel like they must have some sort of technology that, like, if the same person like they must have some sort of spreadsheet that says this card sold to this person. And if that happens a bunch, I feel like they maybe would reach out and be like, hey, what's going on here? Like, you have bought a bunch of cards from this specific person. Like, do you, like, I don't know. I don't know if that's out of the realm of possibility that they should do something like that. I think any way to, shore up the industry and make sure that everything is above board, I would say that's going to be better than not. Even if 9 times out of 10 you don't find anything, I think it's better to have the resource of knowing and better to have the assurance of knowing that fraudulent stuff is not going on than to just be like, just throw your hands up, be like, well, we don't know. We don't know if it is or it isn't. Like, yeah, sure, maybe some weird stuff's going on, but it's like the card's getting sold, we're getting paid a commission, like all of this stuff. And especially with the vaults now, like that's kind of the other big thing about this is like, I guess in theory, if you're getting the card shipped, that would be maybe an issue. But like with the vault, again, I don't see why it's not a terrible idea to say who the person is, to have some sort of golden account or some sort of sports card overarching account that says, hey, I own these cards and I sold them to so-and-so in a sale through Golden, or even just, like I said, this would be maybe a joint effort by some of the sports card companies or some of the grading companies or some of the auction companies, would be to look at it and say, now you have this profile that says you sold X card or you bought X card. And just, do you want that all to be public? And I don't see why people wouldn't want something like that. Again, I think any way to legitimize the industry as best you can, I think is worth the extra amount of effort. Now, I don't know. This is obviously pipe dreams, and maybe this is more fixing an issue that doesn't exactly exist. But in my opinion, I think it would be better for the auction houses to give you some sort of identification, give you some sort of account, essentially, that is a public-facing account that people can see. I don't know, that people can see your transaction history. I don't know. I think that would be a good idea, but at the same time, I do see how people might say that's an invasion of privacy. But I think overall, if you're not doing anything sketchy, then in my opinion, you really shouldn't have anything to worry about in the big scheme of things.
And I was probably going to talk about some of those golden cards, and I don't know. I may or may not, because now we're getting to the point where it's like they're almost a week old. I don't know. We'll see if any big news breaks in the next day. I may cover that versus some of the golden cards, or if there's nothing that I may talk about. But this episode does have to do with golden, though. That's the thing. So that the SGC Wilt Chamberlain, I believe I talked about that last week. The SGC Wilt Chamberlain, that SGC 10 that was recently graded, that has been sold in a private auction through Golden Auctions for $1.7 million. And I mean, I guess that probably makes the PSA 10s, since there's 3 of them, I don't know, maybe 2.5. I would say 2.5 is probably more like 2. 2 would probably be, since there's 3 of them, because I would say the SGC 10 is probably lower in terms of the overall stature of the grade versus the PSA 10s. But either way, we still have what is one of the only $1 million sales this year. And we keep, obviously the number of $1 million sales has gone down pretty significantly over the past few years. I don't know. I think I remember a while ago pulling some of this data and looking at the overall, and I believe 2020 there was like 50 cards that sold for $1 million, and then I think like it went up a year, and then it just kind of plummeted pretty much like in half. So, the amount of these cards are becoming more and more rare. And I just don't understand how somebody, I understand that these cards are valued at these prices, but it's hard for me to really wrap my head around the fact that someone paid $1.7 million for a card. And I know, I bet you there's places on the internet where you'll say that and they go, yeah, no duh. Like, we also believe that. But even the $100,000, like I just can't imagine how much money the person must have that's buying these cards that, has the discretionary income to buy a card for 1.4 or 1.7. And, this card I think is, I have talked about how many cards are even left overall that haven't been graded, that are like some of these like super prestigious cards. Like I wonder how many Michael Jordan Fleer rookies are just not graded, and they're just either they have never been graded or they're taken out of the PSA case. It has to be or any of the other grading companies, because there are other companies that grade that Fleer, which that actually may be what I talk about on tomorrow's podcast. Now that I'm thinking about it, there was a Jordan Star rookie that sold for like $220,000, which, that's insane. It's really resetting sort of a kind of an interesting market when PSA they changed their laws or their rules about grading that card, because if you remember, a lot of people companies just outlawed it. They just didn't grade it. And now companies, I don't know, for whatever reason, they've decided that they can spot the counterfeits versus the real ones. I don't know how they figure that out, but either way, that's maybe that is going to be tomorrow's episode. I don't know. But with that card specifically, and even the Fleer Jordan rookies, and these Fleer Wilt Chamberlain cards, the thing that I wonder is like how many of these cards just have not been graded. The percentage, because I don't know. I just don't see how someone doesn't get it graded. Maybe someone doesn't want to get it graded, or actually maybe that's a better question, because I think that there are people probably who don't want to get their cards graded. How many cards exist that we don't know, that people don't know? No, I'm trying to come up with the example here. How many versions of that card are ungraded by somebody that they either don't know they have the card, or could be in like one of their like basements or like their cellars or something like that, and they just don't know. First of all, they don't know they don't know that they have the card, because I don't know, I think you could maybe take the number out of people. If they don't want to get it graded, they just don't want to get it graded. It's whatever. But so I wonder how many of those versions that will maybe never get graded. I don't know, but this one, it did get graded, and it came back at 10, like an SGC 10. So they really, this person really, they won the lottery here. I think they won, I don't know. We've been talking a little bit about lotteries recently with sports card things, and I think that somebody probably hit the lottery here. I don't know. They said that the story goes of this card, I believe it was I saw it on Twitter. The person found it in like a grocery store or something, or like in a convenience store, and they got it graded and it came back in SGC 10. I mean, that's wild. For that type of card to exist, just somebody just had it, and because it's like I always talk about how hard it is for some of these cards to even be in good condition just at all. Because you're looking at paper that's over 60 years old, 70 years old, some of them. So 61, so that would be 80 years old. No, 60 years old. Again, I think I did that math last time and I got it wrong. So this card is over 60 years old. It's been printed 60 years ago, and it was still able to get graded and come back with the perfect grade. And then the person sells it, and they sell it for 1.7. Whew, $1.7 million. I mean, can you imagine that? This person's life just changed overnight because they got this card. I mean, it really is it's a very interesting circumstance within the sports card industry. And that's another, if we're talking about wondering how many of things there are, I kind of wonder how many of those types of stories there are within sports cards. And I think it's maybe more common. Maybe it seems like it would be more common, but maybe it isn't, because, how many people they entered a break, and this is obviously a gambler's mentality of thinking this way, of being well, how many people entered a break and then they got one lucky hit and it was the first break they were ever in. I mean, that's kind of what this is like. That's like this person going into a break and pulling like the one of whoever, and they just happen to have the card, and they basically, they had a one of one because that card is it's the highest graded SGC card, and it's the only SGC 10 that exists. So technically they did play like they gambled there. No, they got the card, and they were lucky that they came back with that grade, and then that's what came with the price. I don't know. I mean, I think is also interesting that like if somebody tries to sell that card not graded, the value of that, it had to have, once it came back with that SGC 10 grade, the value of that skyrocketed so significantly that, again, it's like if I don't know, if you have the gambling mentality, if you have a gambling brain like I do sometimes, like if somebody comes into the sports card industry and they get lucky and they pull one of these cards, or they pull, out of a pack from Walmart or something like that, and they are able to get a grade and they sell it for $1 million, or they sell it for a couple $100,000. I don't know. I'm wondering how many of those types of stories there are. I'm sure there's probably some, but I also think, on the flip side of that, I'm sure there's probably even more of people who have just been in this industry their whole entire lives, and that's something like that, and they've done breaks, they've bought boxes, and none of that has ever happened. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that could be why some people are a little bit more cynical towards the big hits and breaks and stuff like that, is because they haven't gotten the break. I don't know. I don't really think that's necessarily correct, but I could see how someone would be angry, if I'm going to be honest, from that perspective. So like this person, 1.7, sure, it's probably with taxes, you're getting about half of that. And then I'm sure Golden probably took obviously some sort of commission there. So I don't know what it ends up being. It probably ends up being a little bit less than $1 million, like probably like 800,000 maybe, but still 800,000 is money that you didn't have if you just found this card and you were able to obtain it, and then you got it graded, and now you have this crazy private sale that Golden did after a pretty good weekend on their site for auctions as well. Over the last couple episodes, I have been teasing that I was going to talk about some of the Golden auctions that ended, and actually, if I'm going to be honest, I think I've touched on them as much as I was going to on some of the things. I mean, I think I made most of the points. And there is a news story we're going to be talking about that's not that. So I just want to start off the show by saying I'm not going to be, I don't know, maybe Monday. I don't know. I keep teasing that I'm going to talk about some of the cards that sold from Golden now it's actually even Friday. So now it's like way past when they sold. So I don't know. I mean, really the important stuff I think I talked about, I think that Wilt Chamberlain, which wasn't even part of the auctions, had been sold. The only real card that I think was super very important was the Michael Jordan, that star rookie that that PSA has started grading in the past year, probably, or I don't know. I lose track of time sometimes. So maybe not in the past year. Maybe it's been the past couple of years that PSA has decided they're going to start talking about this. The thing that I'm going to talk. Oh, and sorry. So basically, I'm not going to talk. I may talk about them Monday. I don't know. But there is a story that I'm going to talk about on today's episode. That's where I'm going to get started here. So there has been, not even a report. Panini came out with a blog article talking about how they are partnering with a company to try and expand their college reach when it comes to their trading card business. And I have a couple different things. I have probably at least two things, I think. I think one is Panini's really just trying to, I think that this means that Topps actually has some big plans in the works. If Panini is trying to get the rights for some of these colleges, like I believe in the article, they mentioned that they got the rights for Texas football, which I forget if Arch Manning signed a deal with either of the companies. I feel like he signed with Panini. But Texas is one of the colleges. Ohio State is another one. So the Brander Group, they are partnering with them to expand their NIL business, which is interesting because they also talked about football and volleyball. So maybe volleyball is something where I don't know, which I think is I don't know if that's something where it's more interested, or if people are more interested maybe than I'm expecting. But in the article it says Ohio State, Nebraska, Texas, and they're trying to expand
I guess, two other sports, or I mean, two other colleges, which I think makes sense. I think I may or may not mention this on episodes where I'm talking about exclusive deals. I just don't really like them. Like exclusive sports card deals, I don't think are good for the industry. And this is where, you know, you've heard me develop this opinion probably over the past like couple weeks of just more. I thought that they were good for a while because it was like, oh, cool. It's like, you know, company, or it's like entities or IPs are trying to get into sports cards. But now I'm just like, well, yeah, but I wish there was a choice. I wish I had a choice between, you know, the Quinn Ewers, I believe his name is. I wish there was more of a choice between like Topps and Panini for those. And so, like I said, the first piece of this is that I think Panini probably has some big plans, and I think that's also based off of Topps's plans. I think that there's some sort of leak going on here where Panini is trying to they see what Topps is doing, and they're like, okay, we actually need to do this because if I had to guess, Topps and Fanatics probably have some sort of data piece or some sort of thing that is showing them that college is maybe the way to go when it comes to engaging with more with a newer audience. Because I do wonder if at this point all of the options have been exhausted when it comes to the pro sports, because anybody who is into sports or into internet or into anything along those lines, I just don't see how they wouldn't know about sports cards. And if they're trying to 10x like they say that they are, Fanatics at least, they're going to have to find different avenues. I don't think that there is a secret hidden base of sports fans that don't know about sports cards. I think that there could be a base of college fans that, you know, they may only be college fans. And if there are no cards for those people to collect, then they may just never get into it. Like if there's not an opportunity for them to collect a quarterback or a player on their team that they're a fan of, if they, you know, maybe that's their big team, is their college team is the team that they like the most versus any of the pro teams that are maybe in their area. There just wasn't really a good opportunity there wasn't a timely opportunity for them to collect college cards, because there have always been college cards. There have been, Panini has been kind of the, I don't know, the gatekeeper of these college players and the college partnerships or licenses or whatever, however you want to say it. Panini has been sort of like the one company that has done this, and I think Topps, if you heard this, you've heard me talk about how I think Topps is really changing the game here when it comes to their college cards that they're coming out with. I think that the way that they have been able to secure NIL deals and the way that they've been able to come out with college cards of players when they're still in school, I think is revolutionary for the industry. And, or at least revolutionary for this era of the industry, because I'm sure you could go back, I'm sure you could go and find like from the 80s or the 90s, like companies that were coming out with college cards. And they may be, maybe even with Topps, I guess off the top of my head, I don't know necessarily, but I'm sure you could find them. But for this industry, the college card has been demonized. I don't know. I think that's kind of an extreme word to use, but it really is like the lowest of the low in terms of what people want within sports cards. I think because of the timing of when Panini was coming out with them, I don't know if maybe they weren't. I'm sure NIL changed the landscape of when Panini was able, or when Topps in this scenario as well, they were able to come out with these cards. Like I'm assuming they had to be in the league for them to come out with cards, which then what that would then lead to is like Zion, for example. He is on the Pelicans, but he's in Duke cards, but so Duke people are like, well, he's not really on Duke anymore. So I don't know, maybe, and that's maybe a projection of myself thinking that, and that may not be 100% correct, but I don't know. I mean, I think if it was the opposite, I think college cards would be much more popular. And I think we are going to have to soon have a conversation. And I don't think that this is going to go over well or easy or just, or it may not happen at all. I think that's kind of maybe the scenario here. I think we're getting into an era where we really do have to have a conversation about should college cards, like if, and this is, I think there are caveats to this. They have to be licensed. They have to come out when the player's in school. There has to be some sort of insignia on the actual card itself to determine that, oh yeah, this is like a rookie card or something along those lines. And I think with Panini, what they've done is there's some sort of rated prospect logo that they've used. And then even on this announcement I saw, there was like an NIL, there was an NIL badge on the card. So I think for baseball, this is never going to be the case. For basketball and for football, I think that there is going to be a case made soon, probably in the next few years, that the college card, whatever the first college card that comes out with, I think people are going to start viewing that as more of an important card than just someone, you know, if we're talking grand scheme of things, like, it could be in the top 5 of important cards nowadays, which I think before, I don't know how many products there were. I'd say there's probably like 30 or 40. It was probably in that lower tier, or the college cards at least, if not last, like if not all the, like you could take every pro card and then whatever the lowest pro card is, take the best college card. And that's how I think that they've been viewed in the industry recently, where I think that there's going to have to be some sort of conversation with, and I don't know if this is going to be some like crazy deal that happens or some, you know, some expensive sale. Like, I think that, you know, the Iowa Caitlin Clark card, I think is going to be a very iconic card. I think there's going to be a conversation, at least in my opinion, and this maybe even be the same as like a couple years ago, I kept having this take about how I thought football cards, I thought position players within football cards were really going to start taking over because of the price of quarterback cards was just too high. So I don't know, this might be the same thing. And I have taken that take back a little bit, just because for like 3 or 4 years, that's what my thought was, and it just never happened. So I think that, you know, I don't know, maybe potentially this could be a similar scenario where I think that this could be a big change within the industry. But I also think that like maybe that's just being wishful thinking. I don't think that wishful thinking. I don't think it's a descriptive term. It's me doing, it's a verb. I think that there will be a conversation in the near future of whether college cards are actually going to be viable to buy and sell, just because of the way that Topps and now Panini have started investing money, and they started actually working on these cards and working on these products to, I guess, make them good. I mean, get bigger names in the products. And if they start coming out with the cards in a timely manner, like when the players are still in school, I think we're really going to have a pretty interesting conversation over the next few years. But I also will caveat with that, I have been wrong about things like this in the past in terms of just coming up with takes that I think are interesting. And that would change, I don't know, the landscape of sports cards in a way. Like I think, you know, quarterbacks have always been the card to collect within football. I still kind of think that wide receivers and running backs could make a little bit of a dent into that. But I also have been thinking that for the past few years. So I don't know if this is going to be a similar scenario, but I think it is something where there are indications, in my opinion, that the college card will eventually be in the conversation for most important card to own of any given player.